Guess who's back? You know what we're doing. The Capricorn full moon. So what's brewing? Chiron, the Wounded Healer seed, the energy antenna from Anjani and me, the BIGE, the fifth letter. Mentally more than ill cheddar, the ex-bed wetter, but I really don't care. I spit the truth with the savoir-faire, more than flair. You know I go. Full moon, that's a light, yo. We're shining bright and we're bringing it for you. Chiron, the Wounded Healer, let's do. Ready, set, time to go. Knowledge is love. Let's start the show. Ooh, ooh! Knowledge. What's up, everybody? It's Eric Taylor, Big E Astrology, episode 358 of my Knowledge is Love Astrology podcast. Ooh, I'm hyped. It's my moon, Capricorn full moon. I am so honored to bring back, she may be not only the returning guest, my soul sister, but maybe the guest that's been on the most. Miss Anjani Siegrist, Venus Gemstone, Awaken the Dream School, amazing astrologer, herbalist, and she is a Chiron expert. I present Miss Anjani Siegrist. Hello, my friend. Welcome back to the show.
Hello. So good to be back with you, Eric.
I hope you like that intro.
That was so cool. I actually just recorded it and I'm posting it right now on our
Oh my goodness. You're going to make me blush.
Yeah,
Well, it's the Capricorn full moon. Tonight we're talking about Chiron, the Wounded Healer through the signs. And this is to wet your whistle in prelude to our workshop webinar August 16th, where Anjani Siegrist and I are going to be presenting for about maybe 2.5 hours, only $28. We're going to figure out the time on Saturday, August 16th with a real deep presentation. This woman gets deep into Chiron. And so you want to be there at this webinar. We can do Chiron readings for you there, but we're going to really get into the houses, the deep energy of Chiron, because this centaur, there's a lot behind this story. And I'm just so excited. And how are you feeling on this full moon, Anjani?
So hopeful and excited. And I was just saying today that I know there's so much intensity going on in the world and so much to be concerned about. And while all that's going on, I'm also just so grateful and I feel so blessed, and I'm really, and I don't feel bad about that. Like I'm very happy that
I love that, because you know what? We're moving into a new reality and a new earth. And this Capricorn full moon, you know how we get down Capricorn moons. It's about building legacy, having structures and boundaries, and allowing yourself to walk into this 5D and ascension and to ignore all this fear and noise and distraction. It's not what we need to focus on. You know, so let's focus on Chiron. So give the, and hello to everybody in the chat. Anjani will read your questions and comments shortly, and thank you for coming. But give everybody just a general energy. What is Chiron the Wounded Healer? What's the kind of basic story of Chiron?
Okay, well, what I would like to start with is the way I found Chiron, because when I first started studying astrology, it was like, it's kind of a niche thing at first.
Yeah.
And then when I discovered Chiron was in Pisces. And as you know, I have 5 planets in Pisces. So I was going through a Chiron initiation at the time, which is a perfect time to discover Chiron. And the things that were happening in my life were the clearest description of what Chiron represents. And so what does Chiron represent? Chiron in mythology is known as the wounded healer, but Chiron was the healer. Chiron was a prophet, a teacher, an astrologer. He taught the science of life and the art of war. Chiron was a mentor to a lot of the great legends in the Greek mythology. Like a lot of them, you know, Hercules was a student of Chiron. A lot of people were. It's like people don't think about Hercules or Medusa. Medusa was actually a healer also before the bigger part of Medusa's mythology that we know about. Before that, she was also one of the healers. So there's so much to Chiron. But when we're looking at a person's chart, what I like to do is first look at the house Chiron is in, and then what other aspects Chiron makes, and then the sign.
Yes.
And because it, like Pluto, and Uranus and Neptune, it is generational. Like Chiron moves pretty slowly, more slowly in Pisces and Aries, and faster in other signs, but it takes 50 years. And so when people get to be 50 years old, they're having their first Chiron return. And that's the only thing that we know for sure, is that I'm like, oh, you're 50. And people are usually, they're like, the one people who don't know about Chiron, which is mostly everybody who I come into contact with.
Yeah.
But the common theme is that they come in and they're telling me about undiagnosed, the doctor can't figure it out. I'm having this strange physical symptoms. And I'm like, how old are you? And almost always they're between 48 and 52, which is that Chiron return window. It is a little bit
Wow.
longer because it goes slower. So
Right.
between 48 and 52 is that window. And so what Chiron, it's throughout our life, we will have a Chiron square, a Chiron opposition, and then we have that closing square, and then we have the return at 50.
Yeah.
Now, the first square and the opposition and the closing square, we can't say when they'll be. They're going to be at a different timing in everybody's life.
Right. Based on the sign in the chart. Right.
Exactly. Yeah. So that is, unlike Saturn, unlike the other planets, they're all at the same. We're going to have it at the same age, but Chiron
Right.
is not necessarily like that, which is interesting. But the thing is, I got a little sidetracked there. The thing is,
That's great.
Chiron is teaching us about where we are fractured. They say that the crack is where the light gets in. You know, that's like a common, I think, from the song of Leonard Cohen, had that song that there's a crack, you know. And with Chiron, the crack is where the light of consciousness that is us seeps out. And that crack is where the consciousness seeps in. So it is a two-way thing. So at the you may have experienced this around that time frame. This is when a lot of people really come out, because you're having to go through this massive healing process where all the other vulnerabilities and heartbreaks and things that happen in your life have a culmination at 50 years old.
Yeah.
And so if somebody knows this, like I'm not, haven't had my Chiron return, but since I learned about Chiron and I've read so many charts, and what I do is go through their entire life and chart every time they had a Chiron initiation, and we can weave together a thread and come up with what is the thesis, or what is the thing that connects all of these different times in your life. And you can come up with a phrase that's like, oh, my Chiron initiation had to do with power in intimacy, or mine had to do with heartbreaks around not feeling worthy in relation to my parents, or something. Everybody has a different
Right.
thing.
That's so deep. You know, see, and this is why I love, and this is why you guys, our webinar is going to be so fascinating. You want to come August 16th because, as you can see, she's got a depth and plethora of knowledge. Now, I think of Chiron a couple of things, right? It's, you know, in the constellation of Sagittarius, it's between Saturn and Uranus, and it was a half man, half centaur, right? And I think of that energy antenna. But Chiron's wounding can be very unconscious, right? And when you look at the degree point, that will tell you the age of the wound. For example, if it's 15 degrees, the wounding could have happened at 15 years old. But I've seen double woundings in charts, Anjani, where they may have had a wounding also at 6 years old. And then, you know, a lot of astrologers talk about it, and even famous astrologer, I think it's Tom Jacobs, talks about the wounding that is while you're in the womb, up to about 15 or 16 months of you know, being born. And so, you know, this is such a layered topic and subject, and there's so much nuance. And this is why tonight we're just going to kind of dip in real quick, give you through the signs, and then hopefully you'll join us on August 16th, because then you will get a depth and a wealth of knowledge so that you can integrate and truly work with your wounding and then become the healer yourself with the Chiron. So that I'm excited. I'm so excited about it. I can't wait. And so you want to start? I'll start with Aries and talk about the wounding, and then we'll work our way through. But maybe you want to just real quickly see if we have any questions and say hello to everybody in the chat.
There's so many good things coming in the chat. I'm so
it.
happy to see Stephen the Jupiterian here, because I always see him in other astrology chats, and I'm like, I want to get to know you, Stephen, because
Yeah, Stephen
he's
is
always
he's
asking
part of
good
my tribe, and he is
That's
a Pisces and a Sag rising, a Sag moon, and a great gentleman. Yeah.
My Chiron just crossed my natal Chiron in the 4th house of Aries. This is read my lips. I'm 51 years old. I suddenly developed heart issues and really bad arthritis. See, this is the kind of thing that will happen. And what I was getting at saying is that
Mm,
if we know that this process is happening before we get to that threshold of 48 to 52,
right.
then every opportunity, I'll say it like this: when you come into contact with your wounding, which you don't have to know your astrology chart to know what your wounding is. I can tell you that the
Right.
wounding is something that you put a band-aid on. So if it's going to be something that you're constantly like, oh, let's not talk about that. And I'll use myself as an example with my Chiron, and it having to do with intimacy and with just showing up, because it's like about my personal beauty and feeling like under attack in some way. I have a
Mm,
square, a Chiron square, my Venus. And so there's like this, my beauty is a vulnerability, that it makes me a target for unwelcomed advances that I've never appreciated or liked. And it makes me feel very scared. And the
okay.
thing you were
That's
talking
deep. Yeah.
about with that, mine is at 6 degrees Taurus. The initial wounding that happened during lifetime that I can remember did happen when I was 6.
Yeah.
And so that's an interesting thing. And I wouldn't say that when I'm doing a reading. I wouldn't call that out, just because I don't want to limit it to, but
It's
there
not that
is
one point or that one age. It can be
ex-
multiple. Yeah, exactly.
exactly,
But it
exactly.
is a good point for identifying it with clients because, and also I'll tell you something, for the doubters of astrology, that Chiron wound and that degree, they're like, wait a minute, how'd you know that? Or how'd you know to ask me that? And I'm like, it's in your chart right there. I mean, trust me, I've done that with people and they're like, whoa. It makes them pause and be like, what'd you say about astrology? You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's power. It's like a knockout punch, you know?
Right, yeah. And also there is a thing too where my first Chiron square happened when I was 6. And it's at 6 degrees Taurus, and I was 6 years old. And so, all that stuff, it is, but the reason I don't do that is because of that, like, shock factor. Like, it is good because some people need that. But for mine, it's a slow unfolding. And the thing is, when we look at the first square, the first opposition, and the final square, it opens it up to see more of like, well, what else happened when you were 6? What else happened at
Mm,
that first opposition? So, because what I'm looking for is for people to think about it, let it sink in, put those timings together, to those 2 years really when they were
yeah.
at their first square, 2 years at the first opposition, and then weave together their own story and have like an actual healing process happen. Because what Chiron aims to do is to put us back in power from those times
Yes.
that we felt power was taken from us. So what I don't want to do is to continue take power from people by saying, what happened at this, because I'm opening this story for them to weave it together for themselves. But
Right.
what you're saying is that factor of like, oh my God, like, how did you
Well,
know
but
that,
I'll tell you this. One thing that I've noticed that's really fascinating, and we're gonna get into the signs soon, you guys. But what I love about it is this, because to me, doing that inner child healing work, and when you kind of can identify it, that's where there can be forgiveness for those that may have created the emotional, physical, or spiritual wound. And
Mhm,
when you forgive others, that is a gift to yourself. And
mhm.
so there's empowerment in being able to identify it, be honest about it, acknowledge it, and then transmute it. You know what I mean? Like, you have to kind of like, shadow work is not a game. Like, you have got to go through the darkness to get to the light. So I think Lilith, Pluto, Chiron, super important in the natal birth chart, you guys,
Mm-hmm.
to really become that healer. And because we all have multitude of gifts, everybody's gifted, and the birth chart can reveal to you who you are to be and the gifts that you have, and Chiron, like you said, dynamic healer, dynamic. So, okay, you want to look at one more question and then we'll start with the signs?
Yeah. I love your group of people.
Thank
Everybody's just
you. They're
so
the best.
they're the best. And everybody's so kind. They're knowledgeable because you're teaching. Gosh, there's so many good things. Grand evening, Eric, Anjani, and the knowledge is love, unconditional love and light. Let's see, full moon. The full moon is on my midheaven. That's Gigi, the Empress.
Yeah. Hey, Gigi. Hey, Quintella. Yeah. There's some
Tella, if
amazing.
Chiron is retrograde in the natal chart, does that affect the person differently? Chiron is going to be retrograde a lot of the time. I think that, yeah, I would say yes, that any planet retrograde is going to be different than a planet direct, in that the experience is more of like an internal thing. Not to say, I mean, Chiron is an internal thing
Yeah.
anyway.
But it's like
But
an extra. You're right. Yeah.
yeah, more internal.
And when planets are retrograde, they're also closer to the Earth. So how would you view that with the energy of Chiron, right? Because it's really more of an asteroid, correct?
Yeah, yeah, it's actually labeled as a centaur, which
Yeah.
it's in the asteroid belt. So
Yes.
I don't really understand why whoever decides all this stuff, maybe it's NASA. I'm not sure why, like what the parameters are that they use to make up all this stuff. But yeah, I don't really know why, if it, like, I can't really speak on that, on the retrograde, other than it's retrograde a lot of the time. So
Yeah. It's gonna go retrograde in a few weeks.
and when it goes retrograde, just like any of the other planets, there is this kind of boomerang effect of like a quick burst of those issues that will come up. Just like in the news, you can see when a planet goes retrograde, like Neptune went retrograde, and we had those things, the flooding in Texas at the
July
at the
4th.
Guadalupe River at a Christian
And we had the
girls'
Scorpio
school.
moon. So it was a double dose. And I talked about it in my astro weather. Neptune going retrograde and the Scorpio moon. I knew something was going down on July 4th. And just sending love and healing energy and prayers to everybody in Texas, that was devastating. So, yeah.
It is, yeah, definitely. So, but the point, I mentioned that only to say that when planets go retrograde or go direct, usually there is something big related to the topic of what that planetary force represents.
You're so
So
right.
if the person was born during a Chiron retrograde, I'm just imagining that there would be something different than a direct. And so here's Stephen the Jupiterian. Chiron was Hercules' teacher, and he accidentally wounded him, right? Yeah. So in the story, all the centaurs were drunk and acting a fool, as a centaur does, and and a fight breaks out. And just remember, in mythology, there's different stories. So there's different versions of the Chiron story, and it's good to know them all, and just to kind of get the idea of what the story is about. But
Right.
what's important is finding how that story is etched into your life, in your current situation, and how that is
Apply to you. Yeah.
right. But yeah, so there were shooting these arrows, and Hercules was actually trying to make the party stop when all the roughhousing starts happening. Hercules dips an arrow in Medusa's ink, in the whatever that, I call it ink, but I think it's like blood of Medusa or something like that. And an arrow accidentally gets Chiron, and so he's wounded, and he can't, even his best students couldn't heal
Can't
him.
heal him. Yeah.
And so there's something about the wound that does not heal, that what I've come to understand from reading every book that there is about Chiron, is that some wounds aren't meant to heal, but instead they're meant to be something that humbles us, that brings us down to earth, to be a lowly human, that is like the human experience of having to be in gravity, in Saturn's belt of holding us to the earth, and that we are humans, and with humanity comes some things that are super challenging, and every time we get an opportunity to either choose resisting that thing we're vulnerable to. We can push it away, and we have all these methods of self-protection. We can choose to self-protect and like push something away and call it bad and say whatever we want, or we can sit and be like, oh, I'm thank you for sharing that with me. And what can I do? And just being open and curious and not getting mad. Like if somebody's telling you, you Eric, blah, 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 and you're like, oh, thank you for reflecting that back to me. And instead of being like, no, 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 I'm gonna, fight against the thing. It's like every opportunity we choose to be vulnerable and allow ourselves to be a student. And I think about this. I'm like, well, when I get to be 50, I'm going to have a Chiron return. So I'm practicing.
I can tell you, I was in coma during my Chiron, around my Chiron return.
There you
So
go.
it was not a joke for me. It was very, very, very real and intense. And it's, that's a separate episode right there. So before we get to, I want to start with Aries, but before we get to it, do you feel, because you did mention this, and I wonder, because I see benefits with this, with the Chiron trine, is that an opportunity for really profound healing opportunities for the person themselves?
I think the Chiron square, the Chiron conjunction, the Chiron, anything that's related to Chiron is an opportunity. And sometimes the trine can actually hinder because
Mm.
it's so easy. It's like a non-issue. The person might miss it,
See,
you know?
that's what I wouldn't ask.
Yeah, I have Chiron in a harmonious alignment with my Saturn. And so it's like it's easy for me. I can sit with people in their deathbeds, and I have many times. And it's easy. So I can miss the opportunity to like, oh, I'm going to go study to be a death doula. I wouldn't, because I'm like, I already do it, but I'm not. I didn't
And that's
study
why
that.
the aspects are so important to Chiron, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So see, if there's a square, that is a challenge. The person has to face it over and over and over. And that to me is what pushes you to have to do something. Whereas a trine, it can be something that it just comes natural. And you may or may not use that as an opportunity.
Mm. I love that. That's deep. Okay, so Chiron is currently in Aries. Like I said, it goes retrograde. I forget the date, but it is like in a week and a half or 2 weeks in July.
Mhm.
Along with, we already have Neptune, Saturn, July 13th, Mercury, July, 17th, 18th, depending on where you live. So we're going to have a lot of things, as well as Pluto already retrograde. So July is a lot of like reanalyzing, reassessing, introspection. So strap your boots on. When Chiron the Wounded Healer is in Aries, it is in Aries the longest. And you said Pisces, and I think it stays a pretty decent time in Taurus. The other ones are a lot quicker, but I think those three, it may be the most. But Aries, it's in for a long, long time. And if you guys are not aware, last time it was in Aries, right, late 60s and early 70s, is when we had a lot of assassinations and assassination attempts. And we also had, right, two with our current president while Chiron was in Aries. Now, the wounding is really going to be about how you become the leader of your own life, how you are brave and courageous, right? How you initiate, how you assert yourself, right? And one thing that can really happen with Chiron and Aries, a lot of the wounding can be where sometimes you may over initiate or over assert yourself. You're too aggressive. You're too independent. So it's very much a mixed bag in terms of how it can play out for you when you are breaking down a sign. Because remember, Aries, the cardinal fire sign, the first sign of the zodiac, is like really like the baby. It is head first. Remember, the ram is actually like kind of blind, and so it rams head first to gain spatial awareness. And when you think about those wounds, a lot of times people don't know how to step into their leadership role, and they don't know how to initiate properly or be brave and courageous. And sometimes they don't ever initiate, and sometimes they initiate too aggressively. And so you have to kind of like Anjani was saying, look at the aspects, It's also going to matter the house. Those are going to layer the themes. And these are the things that we're going to get into in our workshop webinar. So, Chiron is heavy in Aries. And, I experience it really strongly in my life because I can, really thinking back on Jenny, I can see where times I initiated too much, or I was too assertive or aggressive, or there was times where, never really fearful, but there were times where like I didn't initiate to the extent that I should have or should. And so this Chiron return for me has been very powerful because I think I had that opportunity in coma to be extremely brave and courageous
And vulnerable.
And went through Chiron tests in my spiritual warfare battles in coma. So it's heavy. So tell us about the how Chiron and Aries really becomes the healer. Like what could that be?
What I would like to say is that the image that comes to my mind is a little boy who is going to scared of bulls, very scared of
bulls.
Bulls.
Yeah, bulls. Okay.
And hides when he sees them, and he's just terrified of bulls. And then he grows up to be the guy who holds the red cloth for the bull to come. And so why was he so scared of bulls as a child, not knowing that his destiny was for him to be in that ring with the bulls? And so we're going through our Chiron journey, that topic, which is either one of the signs. So if we're talking about Aries, which is like he needs to be brave and courageous, that's why he's so scared of it, is because life is preparing us to become the medicine of the wound.
Yes.
So for Aries, whatever it is that, because it is going to have something to do with bravery and courage and facing the bull in the arena. Being what are those guys called? I just watched this movie.
The Gladiator.
The Gladiators.
Yes, the man in the arena.
The man in the arena, and having that fear and having that, because we push it away. The wound, we have it from the time we're born. Because think about this, just the act of being separated from what feels like a holy, safe place in this watery womb, whether your experience in there was safe or not, it was safer than being out here. And you were still connected to source in a way. You had that umbilical cord. You didn't have to fight for food or shelter. It was just there.
All your needs were met in the womb.
Yeah. And then when that is severed, that is the initial breaking away from source that we feel now we're out here vulnerable in the world. And even if you had the perfect childhood, that is,
That's a very unconscious wound. That is the first real Chiron wound. You're right. And it's heavy, you guys. And this is something that I mean, I don't even know if psychologists and therapists are really, touching on this and aware of it and ready for it. Maybe these were things that maybe I think because, he became an astrologer a bit and was studying it. Carl Jung, tapped into different things around maybe Chiron. I don't know specifically in terms of his work, but, that's that's heavy right there. I love how you said that because I so often in my life, I have always been the man in the arena. A lot of people can be on the sidelines and say things and talk, but for me, I've always been that initiator in terms of whether it's the professional actor, the MC, putting myself out on YouTube, astrologer, and even my sports radio, and putting out there my predictions to be judged or criticized, whatever it is. And you see in life, there's so many people. They'll be the ones on the sidelines judging and pointing fingers at you, but they don't want to be the man in the arena.
Exactly.
And I'm in the arena. What do you got to say?
That is very Chiron in Aries, is you're doing it. And you're all out there. So Chiron and Aries, the other thing you mentioned was about being too much. So the other thing about Chiron is that sometimes we will put the wound up as a way of that's still resisting. You're not being vulnerable when you are doing it. Like I'm thinking of it, this would probably be going into Taurus, the Taurus wound. But just as an example, the woman who was abused, which is pretty much all of us at some point. I just had a situation. I mean, it's never ending for me, but I have I have my Chiron in Taurus, and
Yeah.
that is my wounding. It has to do with these interactions. What I'm telling you about that square to Venus.
Yeah.
Somebody just followed me to my massage to get out of his car and tell me that I was a bad driver and flipped me off and said F and B word to me and drove away. And I was just like,
What?
that's my life. So
Oh
anyway,
my gosh.
the thing that I was going to say is, I guess we should move into Taurus possibly, but
Yeah.
the woman who was abused, who puts the wounding up as a shield. Do you understand what I mean? So it's
I
like
do.
using that as,
But it's also a defense mechanism.
it's a defense mechanism, but it makes it the biggest thing about her.
Ah,
It's like
yes,
the
yes,
victim part of it. So
yes.
you just constantly, oh, well, men are like this, and oh, well, I can't trust you guys, and it's like covers her. So she's behind the wound, and so it's what you were mentioning about it either being something that you're afraid of or
Mhm.
something that you overdo.
Yes, it's a very seesaw thing, and you can find that as we get to the last one, also very heavy in Pisces as well with the victimhood and victimization.
Hmm.
So Chiron the Wounded Healer and Taurus the Bull, right, ruled by Venus, and sorry, you guys, Aries ruled by Mars. And remember, always look in your chart at the aspects, and that's why you want to come to the workshop webinar because me and Ms. Anjani are going to break it down for you real deep on that Saturday in August, okay? So August 16th, write your calendars. So in Taurus, a lot of things that I've seen, right? And obviously for you, you're an expert because you have it there and I have it in Aries, but I see things with Taurus being the fixed earth sign. Sometimes it can be around your physical body, which is very connected to Taurus, but it
Hmm.
can literally be around your mouth and your speech, your throat chakra being closed, different woundings around that. But
Hmm.
it can be around sensuality, your values and self worth. And
Hmm.
I've seen a lot of Chiron wounds in Taurus where because Taurus is the five senses, it is like you said, being touched, right?
Hmm.
Someone smelling you or sniffing you, something abuse around food. I've seen a lot of things around that where, even maybe growing up and having issues around eating or, eating too much, so it's very varied in Taurus, but a lot of times it can be extremely tactile. And sometimes it can close someone's throat chakra. And so it's very fascinating dealing with Chiron the Wounded Healer in Taurus because it has a lot of layers. I mean, they all do,
They
but but
all do. Yeah,
but
but
with Taurus, you
you
know,
hit the main ones that I would have
oh
said.
yeah, that's sensory stuff. So tell us about because I guess you live it and you're about to go through the return, but the healer that
Mm.
you can become with Chiron in Taurus.
Yeah, so in Taurus, everything you said, the sensuality, the mouth, one of the things that it's my jaw. Oh my God, I have so much energy in here that it's like, and I'm like, I don't remember something. It's just, I don't know.
Yeah.
It just is. That's just what it is. I do not like to be touched. I've been a massage therapist since 2006.
So then that means you want to touch. You heal
I
through touch.
Yes, that's one of my modalities for healing is through touch. And I'm like, don't touch me. You're paying me $150 per hour for me to touch you. You're not touching me. Don't touch me. And it's like I'm very serious about that. And I'm very selective about my massage who's going to touch me.
I know.
So
That's deep,
it's
yeah.
very, very deep with that Chiron in Taurus. So to get into the healing, like I mentioned about the little kid who's afraid of the bulls, and then as it's because he's growing to become the person in the arena, just like with Aries, for Chiron in Taurus, we gently put ourselves in the situation. I went to massage school, which meant I had to be touched by different people, which was a very,
Mm.
very hard thing for me to do.
Really, it was.
It
Okay.
was so hard. And I had this one woman named Jody Armstrong. Shout out to Jody. I loved her. And we would always try to pair up with each other. She probably had Chiron and Taurus also. And we were like good with each other. But they would sometimes be like, okay, Anjani and Jody, you guys can't work together today. And so I would have to go. I remember going with other people and being like, oh my God, I remember what he
Was it
did.
almost scary?
It was terrifying.
Okay, that's deep. Yeah.
And I'm like, he pulled the linens in a certain way that I could feel it on my clit. And I'm like, like you didn't, it's like years ago, right? But I'm like, no, you cannot massage me because I don't trust you. And it's such a thing.
Wow.
Yeah. So to get to the medicine of whatever your Chiron placement is, it's for us to put ourselves into the vulnerable situation and be practicing having communication, talking about our boundaries, going through all of and it's hard because a lot of times we don't know. We don't even have words for it because the wounding happened precognition. It's like a pre-verbal thing. We don't even understand it. So, but if you know that your Chiron is in Taurus, then you know it has something to do with your values, your self-worth, your ability to receive, period, your ability to receive, whether that's touch, good things, compliments.
And also a lot of times around your throat chakra and speech, right?
Around maybe expression.
Yeah.
Expression and whatever way that's going to be coming out, I think. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. And thank you for sharing that, because that, shows that you've been really working on Chiron in terms of embracing the vulnerability and the reality of it. I think it's Chiron is deep. All right, you guys. So honey, before we go to Gemini, you want to do a quick check-in with the people? Anybody with Aries and Taurus?
So many good comments coming up. Like I kind of want to have another thing just so we could talk about
that's why we got the workshop webinar. These people are going to want to come in.
Okay, this right here, God, they're all really good, but I'm gonna mention this one right here. Oh my gosh, I think I lost it a little bit. What makes Chiron wounds stand out more than other wounds? I'm pretty sure I have my wound at age 15 and 23. Well, if you didn't have your first Chiron square at 6, you would have had it around between 15 and 19 years old. So that 15 kind of rings a bell, but we also have a Mars return at 15. So but her question is, okay, my chart shows age 10 and 28, Chiron in Sag, 8th house, but she's saying what makes Chiron wounds stand out more than other wounds? And what I would say is that it is going to be something that there is going to be a common
theme.
Yeah. And so what if somebody looks at your chart and there's, I do it. It's for me too. Like if I look at my chart, it's different than if Eric looks at my chart, because he'll see something that I cannot see, because
we all have blind spots, even as astrologers.
Yeah. It's like, also like God is like, no, you, because Chiron requires your vulnerability. So sometimes I won't be able to see my own stuff, and it requires me to go outside to ask for help. And so getting somebody else to look at your chart is really helpful. And then looking at the sign, looking at the aspects. I didn't even notice that I had that harmonious aspect to Saturn. I did. Somebody else pointed it out and was like, how did I miss that?
And that lets you know that's right. Saying and speaking the healthy boundaries can help you with that wound about touch.
Yep.
Saturn. That good aspect. So, okay, so that's really deep, because what she said, I think that's probably like Sagittarius 10 degrees and whatever, 28 minutes or whatever. But, so you would look at and think about emotional, physical, spiritual wounds that maybe happen around 10 years old or even 1 year old. And, you may have to ask mom, did something happen to me at 1? But at 10, you may know that it was like someone, said something to you and made you go to church and you don't want to go, especially Sagittarius, dogmatic energy, or a teacher was like pointing at you and saying something to you in 4th or 5th grade, or, different things. And then with the house, that will layer the story. So definitely come to the webinar, because you can get a breakdown and a deeper understanding from the two of us about your Chiron wound. Okay. Mm-hmm. So let's get to Gemini. So Gemini, Chiron the Wounded Healer in Gemini. Oof. Remember, each sign continues on for the next. So with the Taurus, we were talking about the speech and expression, but Gemini, the mutable masculine air sign, we're going to deal with communication, your writing, your education, your early elementary school years, your travel. It's a lot around your lungs and your hands, your ears, how you receive information and knowledge, and then how you perceive it, and then your output, your input output factor with Gemini. And so a lot of people with Chiron the Wounded Healer in Gemini, a lot of those wounds are going to be around their communication, with family members, with kids in school, with siblings, with teachers. Sometimes it could be, and I had somebody, I remember, something happened, they were hit by a car when they were on a bicycle, so it could be like little things, around transportation in your local community, or, falling off a bike and having a big embarrassing moment, or a wounding. There's a lot of different things, but with Gemini, it is also sometimes the wound could be around your speech, or not being able to read and write at a certain age. Maybe it's at 9 or 10 years old, and you're in school, and you're a slow reader, and you have to read in front of class, and then you get embarrassed. These have all played out in chart readings that I've seen. And so it is very strong in Gemini. I mean, it's strong in every sign, but I'm just saying in Gemini, you will notice it a lot of times. It's going to be around those experiences. And remember, because Gemini is the hands, different from Taurus with the touch, but because it is the hands, it could even be a wounding, like a literal injury to your hand. You know what I mean? So, and sometimes I've seen people with, maybe they had asthma as a child with their lungs and breathing. So it's pretty, it's varied, but it's pretty distinct, and it will stand out, with the Gemini situations. So then how do we transmute it, Anjani, and become the healer?
I wanted to mention that I have seen a lot of people with Chiron and Gemini. I don't know why that is. So what age range would those people be? Chiron.
So they're going to be, we're getting into a lot of the Pluto Scorpio millennials.
Right. Okay. That had dyslexia as kids.
Yes.
They were told they were stupid. They were put into
or speech pathology they had to go to, or stutterers. Yeah.
Yep.
Exactly.
All of that stuff. I've seen it. And then what ends up happening is that they are so smart.
Super
Just
smart.
not the way that we in our current culture are programmed to be smart. They're smart in a different way that is like cosmic. It's like the so intelligent, but doesn't have a form or a framework that we're taught to put information into. But they think they're dumb to start with, and they're afraid to share. They're afraid to talk. They're afraid to write. So they're not really expressing themselves. And so the way to get to the becoming the medicine is to go ahead and stutter. Say the things. I have a client who stutters, like really strong stutter.
Right.
But when he does his rapping and stuff, he like raps and he does like wiki wiki wiki, like the mixing thing, and there's no stutter. That's the only time he doesn't stutter. So
that's beautiful.
Studies like that. He talks when he tell his girlfriend something, he'll like write her a song to say it to her. How genius is that?
Yes, I love. Oh my God, you just gave me chills, because that is how you work with it, you guys. That's how you transmute it and then become. And listen, people forget about Gemini. It is the mimic, the court gesture, but it is the messenger. So that's what you said. Like, their intelligence and their communication sometimes is on the ethereal plane, and they get the messages from the sun and the moon, right? And can take it down to Pluto, Hades. That is Mercury, Hermes. So that's very powerful. I love that. Wow. That's fascinating. Okay, we'll go to Cancer, and then we'll check in again real quick with the chat. So Chiron the Wounded Healer in Cancer. Whew. Remember, Cancer the crab, cardinal water sign, emotional, safety, security, sensitive. A lot of these woundings can be connected to the moon, the mother, but it can also be to your emotional safety and security. What's home to you? Did you have to move a lot? Was your home violated? Did you not have a stable, safe home? Were you homeless? Did you not have proper nutrition in the home? I've seen this where people were like, no, I didn't grow properly because we had poor nutrition. I mean, it is very connected to that nurturing and that caring that you were supposed to receive, the comforts and conveniences in that fourth house of home. You may have it in the 8th or 11th, third house, but it's going to be associated around the mother, the home, feeling safe and secure, sometimes being impoverished, So Chiron the Wounded Healer in Cancer, a lot of these people, and I'll let you speak about the healing, but that's where they've got a lot of wounds about what is feeling safe to them, feeling, and this is where they can be overly sensitive, or they don't even deal with emotions and sensitivity at all. They avoid it like the plague. So it's really, really deep, because remember, it's a cardinal sign. So like Aries, it's initiating, you guys. So maybe they overly initiate and they block out any feelings and emotions. They don't even want to hear about it. They don't want to hear about someone's feelings and emotions. They can be, like I think about Paul Abdul, a cold-hearted snake. We don't play by rules, right? So they could be almost come off as mean, but they're not. So how do you transmute it and become the healer?
Yeah. So Chiron, I'm just like, oh,
Yeah.
Chiron and Cancer, because that's our womb, the womb we come from, the ocean of our like primordial water. It's the womb we were in and the
Yeah.
wombs we come from. So this could be also associated with a mother and the home of your mother's home, even like what her family, did they accept you? Were her family accepting of you and of her being pregnant?
Yeah.
That whole thing can come up a lot. So like your very existence can be a problem in a way.
Yeah.
And so that's a tough one. It's like your mother. Did you feel loved by your mother,
Yeah.
accepted? And being able to become a mother for yourself. So what I would say, and for some reason they're drawing blanks. I don't remember seeing anybody with Chiron in Cancer, but something that is coming to mind is that to become the mother that you wish you had.
Yes.
To write out the things that you hoped for. Like, I wish my mother would have made cookies and had a birthday party for me and invited my friends, and then doing those things for yourself, and not in a way of like, oh, well, like not in a vengeful way, but
No,
in a
no,
way
yeah.
of like taking the power back to reparent yourself in a way.
And self-love and self-care.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Nurture and care for yourself. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And these may be the people that wind up being, like the soccer mom or the mom that like all the kids are welcome to the house and can come over.
Yeah.
That's what you see a lot. Like,
Totally. Yeah.
yeah. Oh, everybody's welcome to my home,
Mm-hmm.
like Big Mama's house, So
Mm-hmm.
that's really that's powerful. That's deep. All right, so let's check in real quick with the chat before we get to
Oh,
Leo.
okay.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. Chiron in Taurus. I had a bunch of tonsil stones come up today
Ooh.
after singing last night. I'm like, what is a tonsil stone? I don't know. Do you?
Yeah, it's like, you can get bacteria and they can come up in the mouth. I think that's
Mhm.
my son was just going through, and he's got Mercury in Taurus. But yeah, um, it can be from, dairy or, like things, food, and just bacteria in the mouth, and like
Mm.
nodules. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Then we have with the 13-degree wounding. Oh, wait. With the 13-degree wounding, would there be a wounding at 4 degrees too? I think she's doing like a numerology thing.
No. So 13, the wounding could happen at 4 years old or 13 years old. Yeah.
Okay.
And I've seen it sometimes be both ages. That's what I was
Mm.
explaining. Yeah, it's deep.
Oh, okay. And then we have a bunch of tonsils I want to massage. Oh, this numeral analytics.
Numeralytics. Yeah. Queen bee. Yeah.
Went to massage therapy school also.
Oh,
And then we
wow.
have Sabali. The biggest thing that women with DV backgrounds have to learn is how to put the pain behind them. Learn from the pain. Use it to give you compassion, but don't let it define you. She also says, I believe that vulnerability was a huge lesson bringer from my husband and not having a voice.
Mm.
What makes Chiron wound? Okay, I think we're caught up here. Here we have a Mark Matthews. Greetings, Big E and Miss Siegrist. Fascinating information. I just have one sidebar question. I know our time of birth holds great relevance. Can you touch on that, please?
We actually don't have time because Anjani's got to go soon. So yeah, we'll definitely talk about it. The time of birth is just what sets up your chart. Okay.
Yeah.
What
Okay.
sets up the whole chart. So Chiron and Leo, the wounding is really about your spotlight, right? Being like not brave and courageous like Aries, but brave and courageous in like sharing your heart, your generosity, your creativity. Sometimes there can be a wound around the father. It can be about being overly stubborn and arrogant. And sometimes the wounding could be you're not heard. Your self-expression is ignored. Nobody wants to see you. Hey, mom, dad, look at me. And nobody pays attention. Nobody wants to see your school play. Nobody shows up for your third grade classroom thing. That can be really strong because remember, Leo's connected to children and childhood. So, this is where you've got to watch out because your heart could be closed off. A lot of times you could see people with Chiron and Leo, they're like, no, I don't want to have children. No, I don't know. I never want to be a parent. So this is a really powerful wound. So what about the healing aspect?
Yeah. So I love what you said that because, okay, so as a parent, I witness other parents doing this to their kids, and it's crushing to me even before I knew about Chiron. But when the kid is like, look at me, and they're like, stop, sit down. I'm just like, oh no.
No, I know. Yeah.
Yeah. And it happens at the park. You see
Oh, it
them
happens all the time.
doing the thing, and the parents like, stop. It's too much. Who do you think you are? What are you doing? Oof.
No,
Yeah.
don't do that to your kids, you guys. Yeah.
Don't do that. Don't do it.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of things to say about that, but I'm not, because this isn't the time for it. But so the way to heal, like, how do you heal that? What I would say is, it's tough because Leo is the self-expression, the childlike joy and wonder, and having Chiron there means that there was something fractured in that. And so you're literally looking for, you want to be in the spotlight. There's a part of you that wants to be seen, and also that's the wound, is being seen.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what's coming to mind is sitting in circles, and maybe this is like, you're either in a plant medicine ceremony circle, or you're in some circle where you're not
drum circle playing. Yeah. Having fun. Yeah.
Yes, you're not necessarily in the spotlight. You have your moment in the spotlight.
Yes.
So within those circles, everybody has an opportunity to talk. Yeah. And then when it's your turn, you can practice doing that. And little by little, you know, whatever it is, you join a book club, because in book club, everybody goes around the circle and they're going to have their time to be the center of attention. Mm-hmm. There's groups you can go to where we're all in a circle, and where everybody gets a moment in the center, and we're all like oming at the person in the center.
I love that.
Like doing stuff like that, where you're just you're starting to try it, and it has a lot to do with self-validation.
Yep.
That you're gonna need to practice, work your way up to being able to do that for yourself, and then not looking anymore for that external validation that you were looking for as a child.
And it's perfect that you said that, because you said, you know, the center, and think about the sun, the circle, the cipher, and self-centered attached to Leo. So that's perfect. So Virgo, Chiron the Wounded Healer in Virgo, this can really be about, you know, feeling like, oh my gosh, like your parents want you to be perfect. You have to do this. You're supposed to be the golden child. Perfect, perfect, perfect. People nitpicking at you, you know, oh, why are your clothes always dirty? Why you always got food on your face? This and that, right? Virgo is about service to humanity. Maybe you've got a drug or alcoholic parent and you're trying to help them, and then they swing on you and hit you like, leave me alone, kid, get out of here, right? You could see where with Virgo, right? Because it's the humanitarian, the weed and the medicine. A lot of times these people feel like they're always being ripped apart and criticized, and they're never good enough, never perfect enough, right? And so this is where then they have to become that service to humanity, that dynamic healer, right? Because Virgo is about, you know, Virgo Pisces, we're on the health axis, healing. So tell them how they transmute and become that healer.
A lot of people who have Chiron in Virgo are healers.
Yep.
They actually are in service to spirit through working with plants, and maybe it is going to be a thing that you know, I think like with all the signs, there is something that we already really like to do when we're a little kid, like maybe you did as a Aries, Chiron and Aries person, maybe you did like to be in the arena in a way, but you were maybe a little bit like, oh, like a little bit, but you liked it. Like, and by myself, I loved massaging
Yeah.
myself. I loved giving facials. As a little kid, I was hustling those facials and getting paid $5 to give my aunties a facial and stuff like that. Like, I loved it, but it was also like you put yourself in a situation to be criticized. And so with Virgo, that you may have been that kid who was collecting beetles or
Yeah.
butterflies or something like that, and you had your little collection, and people were like, that's weird. And then you're like,
Yeah.
your collection is everything to you. And so there's a lot of opportunities to get crushed. And then for the healing, it's to recognize. I mean, I feel like first thing is recognizing like how precious that I've been doing
Yeah.
that, and seeing that your placement is actually that it's a
Yeah.
validation that Chiron in Virgo is a healer. You may become the botanist who is, studying herbs, not just for healing, but for mankind, because there is in service to spirit with Virgo. It's a big thing
And you can see
to
nurses,
pay
homeopathic, naturopathic doctors, all that stuff. Yeah.
all the different types of healers, that it's not just like what we think of in the new age healer, like sending Reiki or something like that. It's like there's a big organized factor that has to do with Chiron and
I
Virgo.
love that. I love that. Chiron, the Wounded Healer in Libra, ruled by Venus. Virgo, sorry, was Mercury. Leo, the sun. Cancer, the moon. So, Libra, the cardinal air sign, Libras are great listeners, but this is about finding that harmony, that peace, the seeking the balance. Libra is not balanced. The scales are off balance. It's seeking balance. So your harmony and peace, what was fair to you, could have been disrupted or just totally ripped apart for you. There were no boundaries, right? Remember Libra exalted in Saturn? There was no fairness. You were always the scapegoat. You were always blamed for things. You would like, oh, does my dress look beautiful, mommy? No, take that off. You look tacky. No, no, no. Why are you putting on makeup? You're too young. Like, there's all these things, because remember, Libra is aesthetic, the beauty. What is pleasure? What makes you feel peaceful and relatable to others? And so that can be really a tough one, because also they could deal with bullying and not having your friend group or being ostracized from friends, right? Relationships can be a challenge with Chiron and Libra.
Mhm. So you know what? I know what you're going to ask. The healing is so I love the Libra Virgo Chiron in Libra, because what I find is like people who either they owned a hair salon or they were in a hair salon, because what happens in a hair salon is
Yep.
relationships. But it's like you're tiptoeing in. It's not the same as being married or having the community. It is a
Yeah.
community
Yeah.
though, and people come in there and tell you all their business when you're in the
Yeah.
chair. So and then hosting, that's another thing that the
Libra. Yeah.
Chiron in Libra is going to be really good at,
And planning.
hosting.
Yeah.
um yeah, having events, and they're aesthetically pleasing events that they've set up. And so you mentioned the everything I would say about the wounding, but then yeah, to get into the healing of it, it's like trying it out, getting into communities. And also because you're probably a master at relationships. Because wherever your Chiron is, that is somewhere that you've had to get
Yeah.
mentorship. And so if you were wounded in the Libra, whatever the house is for you, if the wound has to do with something that's
Yeah.
Libra, it's going to be relational. So studying about relationships, getting into different communities where you have to practice being relational. At this point, you are a master of relationships and you're learning to master those things. So just knowing that's part of the healing
Okay, let's go to
process.
Scorpio, because Anjani has to go soon, you guys. So, Chiron, the Wounded Healer in Scorpio, this is very emotionally intense. You may have secrets. You may have had people keep secrets from you, right? Scorpio is dealing with like money and finances and health, but also privacy, power, control, sex. So, this can be a lot of intense trauma that can be very psychological. You know, there could be abuse here. There could be emotional, physical abuse. This could be where you are a child and your mother experienced domestic violence. Maybe you did too, but it could just be something so intense that you become fearful, right? I mean, this could be like, you know, as a child, maybe you had a childhood NDE, near death experience. You know, it's very emotional and intense, but this is where you may find yourself where you're too private, too secretive and vague. And you know, you're not willing to properly emote and share your thoughts and feelings with others, or you become someone that is the narcissist and you've got power and you want to manipulate everybody and you use sex as a tool, as a weapon against people. And you see people like this. It could be very intense and traumatic.
Yeah. So the way to work with this is energy
Yeah.
work, belly dance, Tai Chi, Qigong, like all of these practices that help you learn where your energy is, where your energy is not, and where it should not be, which is in other people's business. So what I would say is like this horizontal, which way is horizontal? This way?
Yeah, side to side, because vertical's up and down. Yep.
Vertical. Okay, yeah. So horizontal power, just pull it back in and let your power be this way. So you're connected above and below,
Yeah.
heaven and earth, and that you're letting that energy run through
Yeah,
this
through the root
way.
to the crown. Yeah.
Because a lot of times, yes, a lot of times with Chiron and Scorpio, there is this, you care about what they said and you care about, and then so all these power struggles
Yeah.
happen. And they're what do they say when they're like, oh, they're an energy vampire?
Oh,
People
yeah.
who are energy vampires often say other people are
Yeah.
energy
That
vampires because
narcissist trait. Yeah.
they're experiencing the exchange of energy in this direction. And so that's, you know, practice belly dance or Tai Chi, because this is getting you like that lower belly, the undulations in the belly where your power center is. You're learning to work with that energy within your body. And it is very much an embodied experience with Chiron. So without getting deeper, that's all I will say for
They
that
can
with
be
Scorpio.
powerful empaths and Reiki masters too.
Oh yeah, definitely, because that's Scorpio is the master of energy, especially when
Oh, yeah.
Chiron's there.
So Sagittarius in this mutable fire sign ruled by Jupiter, Chiron the Wounded Healer, this a lot you can find it around education. You could see the wounding draped in religion. Maybe you were the Catholic Church, you didn't want to go and you questioned, oh, why this, why that about Jesus? Or maybe, unfortunately, you could be, you know, touched, you know, inappropriately at the church. This could also be just about your education, but also, you know, sometimes you see kids with one leg longer than the other and their hips and thighs are off, or they walk with like a little, you know, I had a friend in my neighborhood, and I don't think his Chiron was there because he was my age, but like, you know, he had an issue with like a hip. And, you know, Sagittarius rules hips and thighs and the liver. So Chiron, the Wounded Healer, a lot of it could be about that, like your wisdom and your knowledge and zooming out. But it also could be about even your movement, right? Not being able to walk or move properly, maybe even being in a wheelchair. But sometimes it can be very direct around your wisdom, beliefs, and philosophies, and maybe some abuse through authorities or teachers or religious people. You know, it's
Mm-hmm.
heavy. It can be heavy.
It's always heavy
No,
with
I know, I
Chiron.
know. God.
But you know what, that's just reminding me to just keep reiterating that some wounds are not meant to be healed
Mm,
in the sense of like fixing
right.
it. But sometimes the healing is the
Yes,
acceptance of like,
acknowledging
oh,
it and pushing through. Yeah, yeah, you're right.
oh, my leg is shorter, like that's how
Yep.
I am, you know, and not trying to not, maybe we try to balance it, but not being so overly obsessed with like this vision of what we call perfection. That's another thing about Chiron. In Sagittarius, the whatever the woundings are, if whether it's like a your relationship with religion or the legal system, I was going to say
Oh, yeah,
justice
law.
system,
Yeah,
legal, I
yeah,
don't, or that you're American, but you grew up in
yeah,
Africa and you felt alienated from
yeah,
home and you felt like an outsider. A lot of times with Sagittarius with Chiron in Sagittarius, with Chiron there is a longing for home
yeah.
anyway. a longing for that feeling of acceptance
So you could
that
be
you
moved
felt.
to a foreign land as a child and have to learn a new language, and you
Yeah.
feel like an outcast.
Yep.
Exactly. Oh,
Totally. That is like the
great.
thing with it, but variances of that.
I love that. That is so true. And these people can be masters of language. They can, be, like,
Oh, right. The
yeah,
healing. The healing,
archaeologists.
the healing part. That's the healing part where you embrace that and you do, okay, well, I guess I'm learning Japanese now. Or like, and you may not be good at it right away, but that's the thing with Chiron. We're not going to be good at it because it is a wound, but we embrace it and we give it a try. And so with Sagittarius, maybe you do study philosophy or religion or the culture that you are living in, even though it's not your birth culture. Maybe you study their
Mhm.
culture, and that there's a whole set of wounds that come with that too, because maybe they don't like that you're the master of their information. Like Dr. David Frawley, I don't know where his Chiron is, but in India, he is respected by the Indian teachers, and and so there can be a thing too where you are not respected by the culture that you're the master of
Right,
their
right.
information, because like
No, and you can see that like in
social or
school, right? Like a high school teacher that's like Irish that becomes like the most amazing Spanish teacher. Yeah. Yep.
totally.
That's so great. Okay, Chiron the Wounded Healer and Capricorn the Goat. Yeah, Capricorn. So, this is Saturn, right? It's the cardinal earth sign, right? Status, success, hard work, discipline, being organized. These people want to achieve. And, this is a situation where you could struggle in school as a child. You may feel restricted by your parents or the education system. This is where like you have no real safety net or the feeling of boundaries growing up. Maybe your father works so much that he's never around, and you don't have that, that kind of like stability, right? Stability is the key word with Capricorn and Saturn. So you could feel unstable. Maybe you live in a big city, skyscrapers, you never get to go to the park or spend time in nature. So when you have Chiron the Wounded Healer and Capricorn, sometimes it could be about, discipline and hard work. Like you don't ever want to come home and do your homework, or, you get abused or told like you're not smart or not intelligent, that, oh, you'll never achieve anything in life. That could be a
Mm,
scar from a guidance counselor or a teacher. Oh, you'll never be successful
mm,
with those grades. So yeah, it can be
mm,
really heavy.
mm. So Chiron in Capricorn, I just realized I feel kind of like weird not knowing the houses, because it's okay though. We're just
Oh,
doing a
just the sign.
broad
No, no, the
stroke,
house tells such a deeper layer.
right?
That's for
The
the webinar. They
house,
gotta come.
yeah. But Capricorn, okay. So that you mentioned scapegoat,
I
right?
didn't, but yeah, I mean, kind of like in other ways. But you're right.
Oh,
Yeah, you get, and you're not good
okay.
enough. You can't achieve. Yeah.
And the truth is that you are probably going to help a whole culture of people to, in some sort of a way, you end up being the
The boss,
grandpa
the
of a
leader.
bunch of
Yeah, the
people, but
OG.
that
Yeah.
you didn't, they're not your progeny, but you mentored you were the teacher of a bunch of people, the mentor you changed people's lives with the thing that you struggled with. So that there was like that is such a big thing with Capricorn, has to do with being a scapegoat. But once you're scapegoated enough to the point that you're like, you know what, I am just going to open my heart up and mentor and share and teach people, that eventually it's like you might carry the weight of, imagine if you're coaching you're an old man coaching a bunch of kids, you do influence them so
Yeah.
much, and they
And you're
needed that,
leaving a
and you
legacy.
needed it. It's part of your, they are now part of your legacy. It's like when that movie, I'm talking too much, but the thing I wanted to say is, do you remember that movie where it's like a Mexican movie, and it's about death, and then it's like who was on the ofrenda, which is like at when they're doing the Day
Oh,
of the
okay.
Dead, the people that are remembered, that they're on somebody's altar
Ah,
with They're putting them on the altar. You will be remembered, and your spirit
I love
lives
that.
on beyond your
Yeah.
life. And especially with it in Capricorn, because you are somebody who is a role model for a whole
Yeah.
bunch of people, not just your own
To
family
be remembered,
necessarily.
yeah. To be, yeah, like a legend. Yeah, the legacy. I love that.
A legend,
Yes,
yes.
I am legend. I love that. So Chiron the Wounded Healer in Aquarius, the water bearer, the fixed air sign, masculine energy, definitely Saturn again. And this one is really unique, right? So this is where you are labeled as the weird kid. You eat bugs, you pick your nose, you're bizarre, you're like the rebel, the black sheep, you're the one that dyed your hair colors, or, but this is also where you could have a very unique or weird home maybe, and it's not, I'm not judging anybody or saying anything bad, but like if all your friends are, their parents are married, maybe your parents are divorced, or your mom was like a teenage pregnant mom, or you had two moms or two dads, right? You're different. Your family's different. You can see those type of wounds there. Or, everybody has like Nike sneakers and you're like wearing Birkenstocks, or like you're wearing like Chuck Taylors, or whatever it is. You are always going to be the outliner. You are ostracized and people will consider you to be weird, right? Everybody's into, like, if you're in a small town, right, and there's cheerleaders and the jocks, and like you're the goth kid. That's a very Chiron Aquarius. You're into STEM and science and engineering as a kid, and everybody's like, you don't know how to play kickball or dodgeball? Like, you know what I mean? So you can feel in these woundings, but it can be Saturn, the container, the physical body. You could have a six finger. You could have like a smaller or bigger ear. You may have like, weird, your teeth are like gray, or, so something that can stand out that makes people look at you and identify you as weird, bizarre, unique, and different. You can see that with Chiron in Aquarius. And, it's hard because, you may just initiate to always be the vanguard and be the rebel and be different. And then so you
Mhm.
embrace that kind of like thing. Like, oh, fine, I'll be the rebel. I'll be the black sheep.
Yeah, that makes me think about Nikola Tesla, because it's like, that's weird. Like, wait, what are you talking about? And it didn't even make sense until like a bunch of years later. Then we're like, oh,
Now
we're
we caught up.
catching up.
Yes. You got to catch up to these people.
Right. So yeah, you got to catch up. So if you are the person who has Chiron in Aquarius, it would be helpful to know that you are going to be unique and probably called weird and probably laughed at. Well, we get laughed at with the
Yeah.
Chiron placement anyway, but to embrace that and forget about trying to be like
Yes.
everybody
You
else,
can't.
because you're not
Yeah.
going to be.
You're a trailblazer.
and
You
the,
really are.
and the gift is that you're so weird. And I mean, sometimes maybe you wrote a book and it did not make sense, it didn't catch on, and you were like, oh darn, but it eventually, the rest of people will catch up, and maybe they don't, and who cares?
Aquarius don't care. They really don't.
That's good.
But no, I love how you said that. Yeah, like, yeah, you in some ways, part of your gift and healing is you're going to be like that innovative genius.
Hmm. Imagine if Nikola Tesla was like, oh, you don't like my work, I'll just stop.
Oh God. No, no, no. We're honored to have that information and knowledge, right? 369, all of it. Yeah. So Chiron, the
Mhm.
wounded healer in Pisces, right? Jupiter, modern planet
Mhm.
Neptune, but this is the mutable water sign. So here, this could be the kid that's always daydreaming, walking around barefoot, and like kind of like aloof, and like they're like in the magic, and everybody's like, what? Like, what are you talking about? Like, Chiron and Pisces, you can also be extremely bullied. This can be where you receive some sort of like kids actually physically pushing you or teasing you. Chiron and Pisces also, you could be the kid that is always in art class that's like getting up out of your chair and you're like making glue things on your hand, and everybody's like, what is wrong with you? Like, you're like what was the not Huey Lewis Parker Parker Lewis, but the girl, Punky Brewster. I could see
Oh,
her
yeah.
being Chiron in Pisces, like all weird and different colored socks and creative and coming to school. So this is where you're going to feel a little bit like an alien, Chiron in Pisces, but your spirituality, your imagination, your creativity, it can be shut down and rejected. You could be like, oh, mommy, look, there's pink elephants over there. And your mother's like, there's nothing over there. There's a tree and a car going down the street. Stop it. Your imagination is off the charts, and you could be kind of made fun of and teased for it because you have imaginary friends, things like that.
And what I would also say, because when I went through Chiron being going through Pisces, I actually started, that's when, it's going to sound crazy, but I was having psychic breakthrough, which would be like, I'm working on somebody in my office and I can visually see, oh, she looks like this. She's around about my shoulder height and she's telling you this.
Yeah.
And the person will be like, that's my grandma.
Wow,
like, oh my God.
That's deep. Yes. Yeah. It's other realms,
so,
right? Other spiritual realms and dimensions
yes,
can happen too. Yeah.
Yes. So that kid who was talking about whatever, like my dead uncle is telling a message to my dad, and I'm sitting there like, oh, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, because I have 5 planets in Pisces, I had a lot of those experiences as a kid. So when I grew up and had kids, and my son is very unique, and he had imaginary friends, I just assumed they were there. And I talked to him like, hey, is your friend coming to dinner? Should we set him a plate?
That's
And
cool.
just let him, it wasn't like I was like, oh, you're just imagining things. It's like, oh, that's interesting. Let him know he's welcome to come over.
I love it. No, sometimes it can be really cool having a Pisces mom. Little weird, but really cool.
So the healing for that would be getting into studying dream work, studying just spirituality in general, and getting into, there is a whole realm of that exists. Like that world does exist. And so learning about it could be part of your healing process for Chiron in Pisces and becoming the medicine of that Chiron in Pisces.
Dream interpreters, psychics, mediums. Yeah. Like you said, getting into like the Pisces, Scorpio, that could be doulas, midwives, death doulas. Yeah. All
Definitely.
that stuff. That is so beautiful. So before you have to run, can you check in the chat, take a couple of questions if we, have time?
Yes. Nicola's birthday's today. Oh my gosh.
Oh, shut up. Is this Tesla's birthday today?
That's what Stephen the
I had no
Jupiterian is saying. And I
idea.
cannot,
That is so
know.
deep. Wow. I love that.
That's cool. I have like a secret love affair with Nikola Tesla. He like has brought me things in my dreams and taught me about energy fields.
Really?
And he was my boyfriend. I was like openly like, oh, I'm already in a relationship. Sorry.
Oh,
for like 2 years.
My God. You know what? I love when you share your Pisces-ness with us, That is such a Pisces statement and reality. That is like, I love it. It's pure gold.
Truly is. That was during the time that Chiron was in Pisces that I was doing that.
Wow. Okay.
Let's see. Helping me put stuff together. This is Mama
Mist.
Yeah. Helping me put stuff together. Taurus is my 6th house. And my midheaven is Virgo. Healer, perfectionist, wounding.
Yeah.
Omni awakened. Thanks, Stephen the Jupiterian.
Yeah, that's Felix. We're going to be rocking with Felix on his podcast. I can't wait.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Awesome.
So
both in Virgo. And Jupiter there. Sorry, I don't understand what that means. I have Chiron in Aries. This is key 75. I've done my research, but I would like to hear more from a professional.
Well, come to our webinar. Okay.
It is
August
good
16th. Yeah, we're going to break it down way deeper than this that we could do in a podcast. Like I said, we're probably going to do 2.5 hours. You do not want to miss this workshop webinar, and Anjani and I will be announcing it, shortly. But it's going to be August 16th. We just got to figure out the time, and I'll let you know it's going to only be $28. So it's going to be very affordable and you don't want to miss it. Okay. So you come with your Chiron sign and house and you're going to leave with a wealth of information and knowledge. One thing about the Aries, you know what we were talking about with that Chiron and Aries, and they just mentioned it, very competitive, right? Aries initiates and it's very competitive. I was that little loudmouth kid, big feet, big glasses, and a big mouth. That's why they named me Big E. Very competitive. So yeah, that can happen. You know.
All right. Well, I need
All
to
right,
get
you
going.
guys. This was a pleasure and an honor, like always. And thank you for sharing not just your information of healing, but your time and just your wisdom. And I love how you said that, the medicine, right? So you guys, please watch this. Leave a comment afterwards. I'll see you guys Sunday night. My tribe people, I'll see you tomorrow night. The links are there. I emailed it out. But, go follow Miss Anjani Siegrist, Awaken the Dream School. If you haven't subscribed to her channel and follow her Venus Gemstone on Instagram. She's amazing. Tell them your website too, Anjani, if they want to book with you.
Oh, it's going to be my name, AnjaniSiegrist.com.
There you go.
That's it.
All right. So make sure we see you on August 16th. Come with your Chiron and get your wounding all healed up. All right. All up in the world. We'll heal you up. So thank you for coming to episode 358 of my Knowledge is Love Astrology podcast. And again, thank you, Miss Anjani Siegrist. This was awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, great.
All right.